Very pleased to take a second call in this first reading of the Canterbury Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Bill. If ever there was a misnamed bill, this is it. This is a bill in the name of the Minister for the Environment, Nick Smith, who's on record time after time when he was in opposition criticising water quality around New Zealand, rather like he criticised noisy exhaust. He's done nothing about that either. But here we have a bill which rather inappropriately talks about temporary commissioners in its introduction and improved water management. In fact, there's nothing temporary in the fact that this bill will disestablish Environment Canterbury's democratic rights for the next 3.5 years, and there's nothing in it, in my view, to improve water quality. Quite the contrary. I also would like to note that this bill is in effect an outrageous affront to democracy and to Canterbury voters. I suggest it's actually giving the two-fingered salute to the voters of Canterbury. They will have to continue paying the rates for these commissioners, paying the rates at an undetermined rate, I'd have to say, undetermined, leaving it up to the Minister's discretion, if my memory of the bill is correct. And they will have to pay the bill not just for the per diem rate that the commissioners are paid, but also any transport and travel costs that they've got. So don't talk about the costs to the ratepayers reducing under this bill. Absolutely the opposite. I think that what it's saying to the voters of Canterbury is that they're simply not intelligent enough to make the decisions about who is best to make the choices for Canterbury on water issues. That's really the subtext of this, that the voters of Canterbury haven't got the intellect to be able to decide how their water rights, how their Environment Canterbury should be run. And I think that's a galling statement from this party who supposedly pride themselves on democratic principles. I absolutely believe that is the case. I note the Minister has decided that Dame Margaret Baisley will be the Commissioner General designate from announcements today, but you have to ask who are going to be the other commissioners provided for under this bill. One needs to wonder, perhaps, give it. Well, Alec Neil, there's a name to conjure with. There's a name I noticed on the TV1 news tonight. Dame Margaret's already in place in Christchurch, being welcomed by a beaming, soon-to-be former chair of Environment Canterbury, that little-known former backbench MP, Alec Neil. Maybe he's going to be given a job, and that raises questions about who else will be given a job as the government moves to try and scramble to put together a suite of commissioners to take over the running of Environment Canterbury. This bill is just an outrage. It is going to take away a democratically elected council. It is showing contempt, I think, for the democratic process, as the government has done previously in Auckland. I think it's a signal victory for the Minister for Local Government. He's managing to do to Canterbury what he's done to Auckland, completely neglecting the democratic process, the wishes of the people, or the chance for them to have any input. Here is a bill coming through under urgency, not a skerrick of a chance for any input from anybody, be they from Canterbury or anybody else. It's violating the fundamental principle which says you shall not be taxed unless you are represented. I think from memory, the cause of the Boston Tea Party in America in the 1700s and led to the American Revolution. And I hear that there will be pickets outside the offices of 4 national MPs in Canterbury tomorrow. They seem to have not noticed that there was a 5th national MP in Canterbury, Aaron Gilmore, but I think it was unkind of my colleague Clayton Cosgrove to pick on Aaron Gilmore because maybe he's not aware that Aaron's shopping around in Southland looking for a seat down there. So that's maybe why the voters of Canterbury won't miss him tomorrow. This is a bill that forces through this legislation under urgency. There is no signal in it from the government nor from the Minister as to how they're going to better balance environmental outcomes. And in fact, though the bill makes reference to the water management strategy, and I uphold the water management strategy, I think it's a very, very good thing. It's a round-table, locally driven initiative which brought together people from the environmental movement, farmers, irrigators. I think it's a winner. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Canterbury, and I think it's put at risk because on the one page this bill is saying it upholds the principles of the water strategy, but then is saying it wants to see rapid allocations of water. And the fundamental tenet of that strategy, brought together so patiently by so many good people in Canterbury, and I'm going to read from it now, is around environmental matters. Sustainable management is the first primary principle. Water is a public resource, says the Water Strategy of Canterbury, and the first priority consideration has to be the environment, followed by customer users, followed by community supplies, followed by stock water. Well, what is this bill going to do? Is that a sequence that's going to apply, or is it going to meet the Prime Minister's stated agenda that he wants to see new projects on the blocks in Canterbury next year without, and the Minister has confirmed, there will not be accompanying legislation to this bill to put in place any new environmental standards. And he can throw the borax back at this side of the House and say we didn't put in place proper standards, but he's now been the Minister for nigh on 18 months. He's had the opportunity to take to Cabinet a whole range of proposals around water quality. What he's waiting for is the Land and Water Forum to deliver, and the Land and Water Forum, in effect, I think, is going to emulate what has happened with the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. I think it will try to bring together a round-table consensus such as we have with the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. But if you have the Canterbury Water Management Strategy effectively abrogated by rapid allocation of water, then I think people who put that strategy together will walk from it, and that sends the signal to the Land and Water Forum that they're going to have exactly the same issues. And you'll not hold those parties to it, because they will see the government has an agenda on one side for rapid allocation. It's talking the talk about environmental balance. What party in government doesn't talk the talk about environmental balance? But you've got to deliver on it. And we're at the point with Canterbury's water management strategy that it could start to be implemented given real support. But you cannot undermine that by having a strategy alongside it, an agenda alongside it, which says we want quick runs on the board. We want to see new water in place next year. The Prime Minister is on the record, Dr. Smith, as you well know, and I think you've lost the battle in Cabinet over this. I think those who want to see quick runs on the board to make it look good in next year's election will be ahead in terms of the decisions, and that's what's the result of today, and that's why I say Dr. Smith has lost out, and Rodney Hyde has effectively had a second victory in terms of local government at the cost, at the expense of ratepayers, first in Auckland, now in Canterbury. They've lost their rights, they've lost their democratic say, they've lost their chance for input, they've not been given a single chance to be heard other than through the Creech Review, which simply went to Canterbury and in 3 weeks talked to 20 different groups, came back and wrote a rushed report, which is now followed by a rushed set of legislation. That is not the way to get it right for my province of Canterbury. The water strategy is in place. It is a fundamentally good document. It's got broad buy-in. It's a Canterbury document put together by Cantabrians. It was driven by ECAN, and that's part of the irony about all of this, that ECAN, in fact, was starting to deliver. It was meeting 90% of its resource consents in the approved timeframes, in 90%, which is as good as any other local authority. And I should note, of course, the person who was the chair of the Resource Consents Committee for ECAN for most of the time that the government identified as problematic is the now departing chair of Environment Canterbury. But that's putting a rather blunt point on things. The fact is that Environment Canterbury was starting to get its act together. It was the driver of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. It deserves to have support. It deserves to have more than a ritual bow, which this legislation attaches to it by putting it as Schedule 1 to the Act and making a couple of references to it. It deserves to be enshrined in legislation, given a lot more support than is envisaged in this bill. And I say that this bill is it's doing away with the democratic right of Cantabrians to decide who's in charge of the big economic driver of their province. We on this side of the House want to see sustainable growth, we want to see new jobs, but we do not want want to see another generation of water quality going backwards. This is the first time we've had to get it right, and this government is ripping that asunder with this bill. It is going to put that water strategy under intense pressure, and my belief is you will see that fly apart in a very short time frame as the government implements its agenda for rapid allocation of water. And that's a tragedy in the making, because we will not have this opportunity again. You will not get that number of people in a round table consensus fashion putting aside their own separate interests and trying to do something for the benefit of our province. You will not get that again. And if it falls apart in Canterbury,